Hi, thank you for attending this session called Enhancing the Technical Assistance Offerings from the National Center on Intensive Intervention. Please take a minute to note the disclaimer here. First, let's start with introductions. My name is Sarah Benz, and I'm a senior researcher at American Institutes for Research. I'm currently the Targeted and Intensive Technical Assistance Coordinator for the National Center on Intensive Intervention. Today, we're going to discuss quite a few things. First, we're going to discuss the mission of the National Center on Intensive Intervention. We'll also take a look at our previous approach to technical assistance from 2011 on to 2020, specifically zooming in on our most recent iteration from 2016 to 2020. Then we'll highlight our current approach to technical assistance and contrast some of the offerings. And then we'll offer up some next steps and ways that you can get involved. First, the mission of the National Center on Intensive Intervention is to build knowledge and capacity of state and local leaders, faculty and professional development providers, educators, and other stakeholders to support implementation of intensive intervention for students with severe and persistent learning and social and emotional and behavioral needs using the database individualization process. You can see the database individualization process here on the left. The process really consists of 5 steps. 1, starting with a validated intervention program, such as a Tier 2, secondary intervention, or standard protocol. You progress monitor the student's response to that, and if they're responsive, continue doing that validated intervention program. When the student is non-responsive, you collect diagnostic data, adapt the intervention, and then continue progress monitoring. If the student is responsive to that, you continue doing that adapted intervention. If the student is non-responsive, you continue to collect diagnostic data and continue adapting the intervention as needed. This may continue for some students' entire academic career. The National Center on Intensive Intervention has been in existence since 2011 with the goal of supporting those students with the most intensive intervention needs. Our approach to technical assistance has evolved since 2011, where we initially implemented with multiple districts around the country. Our goal really was to refine our process of database individualization and to determine the feasibility and results of doing the database individualization process. In the next slides, I want to discuss our most recent iteration from 2016 to 2020 and the outcomes that we got from those. So from 2016 to 2020, we decided to build the capacity of state education agencies to do the work of database individualization. We implemented with 9 states, seen here in green, and had some very big successes. We also had several challenges, including state education agency turnover, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. In the next slide, I want to show a video from Wyoming State's story about the results that they were able to get in training their educators in the database individualization process.
Those kids are growing, I'm able to say, like, your kid's back on grade level, and for parents to hear that, it's been exciting.
We've seen some amazing results with the students that we've been working with database individualization. A number of the students that we've worked with have either been exited from SPED, or another group of students we've seen actually move to the next least restrictive environment.
The best story I have right now is a little second grader that last school year we were lucky to be able to attack 5 words from her high frequency words list. And this quarter, for third quarter, she attacked 95 words.
And I am about 1 or 2 data points away from him meeting his goal. And we're having a discussion now with Mom about exiting him from special education services.
I've had one of my students exit special education because of the process and because of the data that I had. And I think that was such a fantastic experience to be a part of. I've never had a kiddo exit special education, to have this experience is so exciting.
Given our lessons learned at both the state and district level, we decided to pitch a new approach to technical assistance. In the next section, I'm going to discuss our current approach to technical assistance and how we're meeting the needs of a variety of stakeholders to do the work of database individualization. Again, the COVID-19 pandemic really underscored our need to be nimble in our approach to reach a broader audience and be more immediate in our reach. Our targeted technical assistance is now very narrowly defined with the goal of building stakeholders' DBI-specific capacity, meaning we will engage in activities that inform various stakeholders, teachers, professional development providers, of what DBI is, and will do so through a variety of communities of practice. Our proposed intensive technical assistance approach will be aimed at building the implementation-specific capacity. This approach not only broadens our reach, but will allow us to begin providing technical assistance more quickly to a variety of stakeholders. Here is a broad view of our technical assistance offerings currently. At the top, you'll see that we primarily are targeting 3 stakeholder groups. 1, those who educate students, such as teachers or interventionists. 2, those who prepare educators, such as faculty and professional development providers. And our 3rd group are those who build and sustain educator systems, such as state education agencies and local education agency leaders. You'll see here that we also have targeted and intensive offerings. So for the targeted offerings, we provide a variety of virtual communities of practice for each of our stakeholder groups. You'll see that the goal for each of those is a little bit different, and we'll take the time to deep dive into those in the next section. Our intensive offerings are around building implementation for our educator systems group. Again, those who are at the state education agency or at local education agency and their leaders. And we will talk about that more in depth as well in the following section. Let's take a closer look at each of our targeted and intensive technical assistance offerings now. Let's take a look at our educator community of practice first. The goal of this virtual community of practice is to build educators' capacity to do the DBI process. We're really asking for educators such as special educators, interventionists, or those who work with students that have intensive intervention needs. We hope to leverage some self-directed learning through content that we've already developed in previous iterations of our center. This structure will have mainly weekly or bi-monthly sessions that include content experts and center personnel with the hope that we provide application-based opportunities to do DBI. Those that complete the application-based homework will have the opportunity to become recognized on our website through the completion of a student-level case study. There will also be completion credits awarded for each educator that completes this series of the community of practice. We hope to hold these approximately twice a year, but could hold them more depending on interest. We try to keep our communities of practice around 30 participants for the educator level, enough to offer the ability for educators to learn from each other, but to also meaningfully engage in our content. We hope that our sessions are about 7 sessions apiece, which becomes manageable enough for the educator to continue on, but also for them to learn enough about the DBI process. Here is a view of our pilot scope and sequence that we've developed. And you'll see here that the 7 sessions include a mini session for those that are completing the case study, as well as an optional open door. In session 1, we talked to the educators about the purpose of the community of practice and really overviewing what data-based individualization is. In session 2, we discussed selecting and evaluating interventions. Session 3 is dedicated to progress monitoring in both academics and behavior. One of the things that we've seen in the past iterations is that it's difficult often for educators to do progress monitoring. Therefore, those that are completing the case study will have a required session to check in on their progress monitoring graphs, where we ensure that they know how to graph their data and therefore know how to make decisions based on that data. Session 4, we discuss what diagnostic assessments are and how to use them. Session 5 is all about developing a hypothesis and bringing in our taxonomy of intervention intensity. Session 6, we offer a teacher panel Q&A, leveraging the learning and stakeholders that we've already implemented with in previous iterations, and them offering up their words of advice. We have an optional open door for case study participants to receive feedback on their case study presentations. And then in the last session, we have a wrap-up of our community of practice, and for those who've completed case studies, for them to be able to offer up what they did during their case study. The next community of practice that we offer is for the Educator Preparation community of practice. Leveraging the center's previous success with a faculty professional development learning series, this community of practice will dive more deeply into existing DBI course content and support faculty as well as professional development providers with learning new concepts and applying them in their settings, as well as in course design. While the sessions will be topically based initially, an emphasis will be made throughout the integration of academics and behavior. Again, the audience, especially for our first community of practice, is for faculty at institutes of higher education. These will also take place approximately twice per year with up to 30 participants over 7 weeks. Again, as timing allows and interest allows, we could hold these communities of practice more. Our next community of practice is the Educator Systems community of practice. And this is really intended, we have 2 different strands, one for the state education agency and one for the local education agency leader. We've learned that readiness is essential to effectively implementing and sustaining database individualization. Not only will we assess readiness, but also provide that mechanism to cultivate readiness through this community of practice. The goal of these communities of practice will be to ensure leaders understand the foundations of DBI and the competencies that are required to build and sustain systems at both the SEA level and the LEA level. Participants will complete an intake assessment that will sort participants into targeted or intensive tracks. Participants that need to develop their readiness will join this community of practice. And again, our timing is approximately twice per year, with about 20 to 30 participants, keeping this group a little bit smaller, and over 7 to 8 weeks. Next, let's take a look at the Educator Systems community of practice scope and sequence. For session 1, we'll provide an overview of data-based individualization. Session 2 will examine the importance of fit within your state education agency and local education agency. Session 3 talks about having a variety of stakeholders at the table, including representation from both general education and special education. Session 4 is all about how to allocate and resources to support database individualization. Resources could include personnel and funding. Session 5 talks about the importance of ensuring that there's knowledge of DBI throughout the state education agency. And session 6 includes discussion of how you're going to continue to train and coach on database individualization. The culminating session, session 7, asks the state education agency or the local education agency leaders to present their work plans, outlining strengths and places and opportunities for improvement within each of these buckets of the work. Our last offering includes intensive technical assistance. The goal of our intensive and technical assistance is really now to support stakeholders in their efforts to build systems that scale and sustain DBI. We're really hoping to provide this intensive technical assistance with either the state education agency systems group or the local education agency leader. Our scope and sequence is guided by individualized implementation plans with very specific goals that are time-bound. A few of the offerings that we believe we will provide in intensive technical assistance is we can help in development of a micro-credential or a learning management system at the SCA or LEA level. We can also help provide support to build ongoing coaching models. Last, we can help coach and consult on a DBI implementation plan. For example, if a local education agency leader, such as a special education director, came to us and wanted to build the capacity of their special education teachers to do the work of database individualization, we would leverage the targeted technical assistance offerings that we have through the educator community of practice to be able to build their capacity while also supporting the LEA leader, the special ed director, in building their overall system. This graphic provides all of our technical assistance offerings for targeted and intensive in one view. You can see the top includes our targeted technical assistance communities of practice. So you have the educator community of practice, the educator prep community of practice, and our educator systems community of practice. You'll remember that our educator systems community of practice serves as readiness for and building readiness for our intensive technical assistance offerings, where we help those systems build their implementation specific capacity. We do so through a variety of adaptive capacity coaching in professional learning systems, helping state education agencies develop micro-credentials, or help them develop a coaching model. The intensive technical assistance is driven through an individualized implementation plan that's customized and specifies those milestones and time frame for the commitment, no longer requiring a system to be our partners for 5 years. If the goals from the educator system are met, then we move the system over to our sustainability community of practice. In this sustainability community of practice, we will continue to need sense with our systems, such as our state education agency and our local education agency leaders. And if the goals are not met through our intensive technical assistance, we'll reassess the readiness capacity of that system to do DBI. Again, with our intensive technical assistance offerings, you can see here, we're really leveraging our targeted communities of practice within our intensive TA and coordinate those existing resources. What are some next steps? Well, next up, we are piloting our communities of practice this summer. Our educator community of practice will run from June to mid-July. Our educator preparation community of practice will run from June to July as well. And our educator systems, we're piloting the state education agency strand, will go from July to August. We'll be collecting a bunch of data on how feasible it is for each of these stakeholders to be a part of the communities of practice. We'll also be collecting data on ways that faculty are able to integrate our resources into their syllabi and course program design. And we'll also be collecting several student case studies. If you're interested in learning more about our technical assistance offerings or any of these communities of practice, please visit our website at intensiveintervention.org. We also encourage you, if you have questions, to reach out to us at ncii@air.org or keep up with us on our Twitter account or our YouTube channel. Please note that the NCII also has a disclaimer as well. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to reporting out the results of our communities of practice in subsequent OSEP leadership and project director conferences. Thank you.